Today I'm going to show you some additional changes to my N-scale track plan. Coming right up. I'm Roy Smith. Thanks for joining me. In my previous video, I showed you the changes that I am making to the configuration of track on that area of my layout just beyond the west end of Echo Canyon. And I explained why I am doing this. You see, I like to watch trains running on my layout. Making this change allows me to watch not just one train, but rather two trains running simultaneously on the upper level of my layout without them having to descend the helices to staging. Here's what that change beyond the west end of Echo Canyon currently looks like. I call it phase 1 of 3 changes that I am making in my track plan. Now let's go take a brief look at it on my layout as I showed you in my previous video. Here we are in the area just west of Echo Canyon. This is what I've done so far. The change I'm making will have a profound impact in the way trains run on my layout. And speaking of trains, here comes one now, eastbound, through the area that I'm remodeling. I will put a link to my previous video at the end of today's video so that you can go there to watch the construction of phase 1 in its entirety. Now, in today's video, I'm going to show you 2 additional track plan changes that I plan to make. Why do I want to show you these additional changes? Because you may be thinking about making similar changes on your layout. I refer to these 2 additional changes as phases 2 and 3. Phase 2 will allow me to get rid of that troublesome eastern helix, which you saw a moment ago in my current track plan. Phase 2 will also reduce the width of the benchwork in this area of my layout from 3 feet to 2 feet, and that's a good thing because it will give me more aisle space here. And it will allow me to reduce the width of my lift-up bridge. And phase 3 will allow all trains on my layout both to descend and ascend the much less troublesome western helix. Phase 3 will link up to the western helix right here. I will be the first to say that there's nothing fancy about my track plan, but it doesn't have to be fancy. It's just a guide, nothing more. Let's talk about phase 2. The main features in this area of my layout include the eastern helix and White Mountain that sits on top of the helix. Building phase 2 will require me to rip out the existing benchwork from this corner all the way to the lift-up bridge which you see here beyond White Mountain. You may recall that I opened windows in the fascia for easier access to my eastern helix way back in February 2019. But of course this didn't help much on the back side of the helix, which is up against the wall. And at the same time, I made the top of White Mountain removable, allowing for access to the helix from above. This is how eastbound trains descend the eastern helix to staging. So once phase 2 is completed, much of what you see here will no longer exist. However, I will try to salvage as much of White Mountain as I can and incorporate it into phase 2 construction, because it was the first 3D scenery that I built on my layout back in 2015, and I'm rather proud of it. As for phase 3, it will descend from phase 2 on an extension just wide enough for 2 tracks along the front of the layout, an inch or so lower than Green River. Until reaching the western helix. We'll talk more about phase 3 when I begin the actual construction. When will I actually start making the changes that I just showed you? Well, your guess is as good as mine. It may be years or even decades from now, because as I've said so many times before, I'm the world's slowest model railroader. And here's some free advice for all you young whippersnappers out there, and most of you are young whippersnappers because most of you are younger than me. Anyways, here's that free advice. Build your bench work while you're still young. Don't wait until you get to be an old geezer like me, because the older you get, the harder it becomes to build bench work. Now, the fun doesn't have to end just yet. You can click on these videos over here for more adventures in changing track plans. As always, I'm Roy Smith. Until next time, happy railroading.